My name is Marcus. I'm 26 years old, and this happened to me on a Tuesday night around 9:30 in the evening on a stretch of Route 41 that runs through the back roads of rural New Jersey. I just gotten back from a week-long vacation with my family, and my brain wasn't firing on all cylinders. I didn't notice that my old Buick's gas gauge was barely moving the whole drive home. I thought I had enough to make it, but I was wrong. If you enjoy real stories that'll mess with your head, hit like and subscribe, because what happened at that house changed everything about how I see strangers. So let me take you back to that week before all this happened. I'd been upstate with my parents and my younger sister. We rented a cabin near some state park and spent the whole time just hanging around, eating too much, watching bad movies. My job at the distribution warehouse had been stressing me out for months, and I needed that break. My girlfriend had wanted to come, but she had to work, so it was just family time. By the time Tuesday rolled around, I was itching to get back home. I wanted to see my girl. I wanted to sleep in my own bed. I wanted things to go back to normal. I packed up my stuff that morning and left around 11. The drive usually takes about 4 hours depending on traffic. My old Buick wasn't the most reliable car, but it had never left me stranded before. It was a dark blue 1987 model that my dad had given me when I turned 22. Thing had personality. It also had problems. The radio would cut out randomly. The heat was either blasting or completely off with no in-between. And the gas gauge was about as useful as a chocolate teaspoon. That gauge was always unpredictable. Sometimes it would be hovering right at the E and I'd still have a quarter tank. Other times I'd think I was at half and I'd be practically running on fumes. I'd learned to just fill up whenever I wasn't sure instead of trusting that needle. But coming back from vacation, my mind wasn't in the right place. I was thinking about what I'd left at home, what I needed to do at work, how many emails were probably piling up. I wasn't thinking about the gas gauge. I remember stopping once on the way up to the cabin to fill up. That was a week ago. A full 7 days. I'd driven the Buick a few times around the cabin area, maybe 30 or 40 miles total. But I wasn't really thinking about any of that. I just assumed I had enough to get home. Stupid assumption. The kind that gets you stranded on a dark road in the middle of nowhere. Let me describe that road to you because I think it's important you understand what I was dealing with. Route 41 through that part of Jersey is nothing like the highways near the city. This is old road, rural road, the kind of place where civilization feels like something that exists somewhere else. The trees come right up to the edge of the asphalt on both sides. They're tall and thick, and they seem to lean in toward the road like they're watching the cars drive past. There are maybe 5 or 6 houses spread out over 10 miles. That's it. No street lights, no convenience stores, no places where you can just pull in and ask for help. I was driving through this section around 8:30 in the evening. The sun had mostly gone down, but there was still this pale orange light in the western sky. The kind of light that disappears fast and leaves you in complete darkness. I had the radio on. Some talk station. I wasn't really listening. I was just doing that thing where you turn on background noise because the silence feels too heavy. I remember the first moment I got that feeling. It wasn't dramatic. It was just this small nagging thought that something might be off. I glanced down at the gas gauge. The needle was sitting in that area where I couldn't really tell if I was at half or a quarter, somewhere in the ambiguous middle. I did the math in my head. I had about 20 miles to go, maybe 25 depending on which way I went. A quarter tank should have been more than enough for that. Should have been. So I kept driving. But then I started noticing things. The road was getting darker. The sky was turning from pale orange to deep purple, to that weird dark blue that happens right before real night takes over. The trees on both sides seemed to get closer together. The road started curving more. I was going slower than I had been earlier. Maybe that was eating into my fuel efficiency. I couldn't remember if I'd pumped the brakes a lot or if I'd been coasting mostly. These are the stupid things you think about when you start to worry about running out of gas. I passed one house. It was set way back from the road on a large property with a long gravel driveway. The lights were on inside. I remember thinking that looked nice, warm, safe. The kind of place where you'd want to be on a night like this instead of out on an empty road. I kept driving, 15 miles to go maybe. I was getting more confident now. I'd probably make it fine. This was all paranoia. I'd made it this far. The Buick had come through. That's when I started seeing the warning signs I should have paid attention to. The needle on the gas gauge started doing something weird. It was dropping, not slowly, faster than it should have been. I watched it go from that middle area down toward the lower quarter. I told myself it had to be wrong. The gauge always acted up. It was probably just malfunctioning again. But my stomach started tightening. I turned off the radio. I needed to focus on the road. I needed to figure out if I was actually running out of gas or if I was just being paranoid. I saw a sign for the next town, 11 miles. That made me feel better. 11 miles I could definitely do. The Buick had gone way longer on way less. I was being stupid for worrying. I eased up on the accelerator a little bit just in case. No need to burn fuel faster than necessary. The engine hummed along. My headlights cut through the darkness ahead. The road stretched out in front of me, empty and quiet. Then the needle dropped below the quarter mark. Now I was actually getting worried. I'd never seen it go that low. Or maybe I had, but I'd always made it to a gas station before things got really bad. The next town was still 9 miles away, according to the last sign I'd passed. 9 miles. My hands were gripping the steering wheel a little tighter now. I was consciously trying to drive as smoothly as possible. No sudden acceleration, no climbing hills hard. Just steady pressure on the accelerator and hope. I passed another mile marker, 8 miles to go. The needle wasn't moving, but it was hovering right at that bottom area where I could feel the car starting to struggle just a tiny bit. The engine wasn't misfiring or anything crazy. It was just this subtle change in how the car felt, like it was drinking the last of something and starting to get thirsty. My phone was on the seat next to me. I thought about calling my girlfriend, thought about calling AAA. I wasn't at the emergency stage yet. I could still make it, probably. Then the trees opened up for a second and I could see the sky. There were stars out. A lot of them. The kind of stars you only see when you're way out in the country, away from city lights. Under normal circumstances, I would have appreciated that. But right then, all I could think about was how remote I was, how far from help. How if my car actually died, I'd be stuck out here in the darkness, with no other cars around and no way to get anyone's attention quickly. I was maybe 5 miles from town when I felt it. That moment, that instant when the car is still rolling but something fundamental has changed. The engine died. It wasn't dramatic. There was no loud noise or grinding sound. The car just ran out of fuel, and the engine shut down, and suddenly I was coasting. I didn't panic. I kept the wheel steady and let the momentum carry me to the shoulder of the road. I pulled the brake gradually, and the Buick rolled to a stop on the gravel shoulder. For a moment, I just sat there, hands still on the wheel, staring out at the darkness ahead. I was out of gas. Actually, out of gas. Stranded on a road I'd chosen not to drive at night because I'd always felt weird about it. Not paranoid weird. Just that sense that some roads are meant for daylight only, and I was about to find out why. I turned off the ignition even though it was already off. I turned on the interior light. The clock on the dashboard said 8:58 p.m. Full darkness had fallen completely now. My headlights were the only light cutting through the black around me. The dashboard lights cast a greenish glow across my lap. My phone said I had 23% battery. Not great, not terrible, just another problem on a growing list of problems. I got out of the car to assess the situation. The road stretched in both directions, empty, silent. I could see my headlights illuminating maybe 30 feet of asphalt in front of me, and nothing but black beyond that. Behind me was the same thing, trees on both sides, the sound of wind through branches, some small animal noise off in the distance. Nothing else. No cars, no lights, no signs of civilization. I looked down the road toward town. 5 miles. In normal circumstances, that would be an easy walk. But in the dark on a road where you could barely see your hand in front of your face, it felt a lot further. I looked the other direction. There had been that house I'd seen earlier. Much closer than town. Maybe 2 miles back if I was remembering right. Large property, lights on, someone home. I didn't want to call my girlfriend because I knew how it would go. She'd offer to come get me. I'd feel terrible. She'd say it was fine, but I'd know it wasn't fine. She'd have to drive all the way out here and pick me up and take me home, and she'd be annoyed the whole time. Not angry, annoyed. That's worse somehow. I didn't want to be that guy, the guy who runs out of gas and needs rescuing. I got back in the car and pulled out my phone. AAA. I had membership from my insurance. I called the number on the back of my card. The voice on the other end was professional and bored. I told her I was out of gas on Route 41 near Millbrook. She said they could have someone to me in about 30 minutes, maybe 35, depending on where their nearest truck was. I asked if they could make it sooner. She said she'd do her best, but no guarantees. 30 minutes. I could wait 30 minutes. I hung up and locked my car doors even though it seemed ridiculous. Who was going to try to steal a 1987 Buick in the middle of nowhere? But I locked them anyway. Then I got out and leaned against the passenger door and tried to settle my nerves. The air was cool. Not cold, but getting there. I could smell the asphalt and the gravel on the shoulder, and that earthy smell of forest that you get when it's evening. The stars were still visible when I looked up. That was nice at least. I waited. I tried not to think about how dark it was. I tried not to think about the fact that I hadn't seen another car in the last 15 minutes of driving. I tried not to think about how, if something happened right now, it would take the police a long time to find me if someone didn't know where I was. These are the things that go through your head when you're alone on an empty road at night. They're not rational thoughts. They're just the things your brain does when it's dark and you're isolated. Then I heard it. The sound that made me look back at that house on the hill. It was distant, but it was definitely there. A sound coming from the property about 2 miles back. For a second, I couldn't place what it was. Then it came again. A moaning sound, like someone in pain, like someone struggling to breathe, but also something else, something that didn't quite sound entirely human, but also couldn't be anything else. I stood up straight and listened harder. The sound came again. Longer this time, more distressed. It was definitely coming from the house with the lights on, the one I'd seen earlier. I looked back toward town. Lights on the horizon, maybe. Not close enough to walk to easily in the dark. I looked back at the house on the hill. Those lights were definitely there. And someone in that house was making that sound. I told myself it was probably nothing. Someone was watching a horror movie. Someone had the TV turned up too loud. Someone was messing around. But it didn't sound like that. It sounded real. It sounded urgent. I stood there for probably 2 minutes just listening. Every few seconds that sound would come again. Fainter sometimes, then louder, like it was moving around inside the house. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my girlfriend. She asked how my drive was going. I texted back that I'd run out of gas and AAA was on the way. She immediately replied asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine, just waiting. I didn't mention the sound, I didn't mention the house. Why would I? It probably wasn't anything. It was just a weird noise on a weird night, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That sound, the way it kept repeating, the way it seemed to be getting my attention deliberately. Or maybe I was imagining that. Maybe it was just an animal, a deer in distress, a dog that had gotten hurt somehow. There could be 100 explanations, most of them reasonable, most of them that didn't involve anything actually being wrong. I went back to waiting. I checked my phone. 25 minutes had passed, 5 more, and the AAA truck would be here probably. I thought about walking up to the house and asking if everything was okay. I thought about walking toward town instead. I thought about sitting in my car with the doors locked and the engine off and just waiting for help to come. That last option seemed like the smartest one, so that's what I did. I got back in the car. I locked the doors again, even though they were already locked. I turned on the interior lights so I could read, but I didn't have anything to read. I sat there in the stillness with my own thoughts. The sound from the house had stopped. I didn't know if that was a good sign or a bad sign. Maybe the person or the animal or whatever it was had resolved its situation. Maybe it had gotten worse and they'd moved inside to a place where I couldn't hear them. Minutes crawled by. I was watching the road behind me for headlights from the AAA truck. I was trying not to think about the house. I was trying not to think about how dark it was. I was trying not to think about anything at all. Just waiting. Just being patient. Just getting through the next few minutes. That's when the headlights appeared in my mirror, coming from the direction of town, not the direction of the house. The truck was early, or maybe I'd lost track of time. Either way, relief flooded through me. Help had arrived. I was going to be okay. I got out of the car and stood on the shoulder so the driver could see me clearly. The truck slowed as it approached. I could see the AAA logo on the side. The driver was a middle-aged man with gray hair. He had that look of someone who'd been doing this job for a long time. He pulled up behind my Buick and got out with this tired expression on his face. I explained the situation. Out of gas, needed a delivery. He said he had 5 gallons in the truck. That would be enough to get me to a station. While he was getting the gas, I couldn't help myself. I asked him if he lived around here. He said he'd been driving this route for 15 years. I asked him if the houses on this stretch of road were occupied. He said most of them were, some more than others. He didn't seem interested in more conversation, so I left it at that. He filled my tank. It took maybe 10 minutes. The whole time I was standing there, I kept thinking about that sound. That moaning coming from the house on the hill. The driver finished up and I paid him and thanked him and got back in my car. My phone said 9:52 p.m. The drive to my apartment from here was about 25 minutes. I could be home by 10:20. I could see my girlfriend. I could put this night behind me. I started the engine and the Buick rumbled to life. The dashboard lights came back on. The clock ticked over to the next minute. I pulled back onto Route 41 and started driving toward town. But as I passed the point where I could see the driveway to that house on the hill, I slowed down. I don't know why. Something just made me look over there. The lights were still on, the same warm yellow lights I'd seen before. But now, as I was driving past, something made me feel like I was being watched. Not paranoid watched, actually watched. Like someone in that house was looking out a window at my car as it went by. I don't like this place, I thought to myself. This whole area just has a wrong feeling to it. I'd felt it before when I drove through here in the daylight. There was something about Route 41 that made you want to get through it as fast as possible without stopping. And now I knew why. I pressed a little harder on the accelerator and kept driving toward town. The rest of the drive home was uneventful. I made it to my apartment building around 10:25. My girlfriend was waiting for me. She'd made dinner that was probably cold by now, but I ate it anyway because I didn't want her to feel bad. I told her it was a weird drive. She asked what happened. I said I ran out of gas. She asked if everything else was okay. I said, yeah, just a long week and a long drive. I wanted to forget about Route 41. I wanted to forget about that house. I wanted to forget about that sound. But as I was lying in bed that night, I kept thinking about it. That moaning, that sound of distress, the lights in that house, the way the whole property had felt wrong. I kept wondering if I should have done something, if I should have knocked on the door and asked if everything was okay, if I should have told the AAA driver about it. But I hadn't, and it was too late now. By the time I woke up the next morning, the whole thing had started to feel like I'd imagined it. Something my mind had created because I was stressed and tired and stranded on a dark road. That's what I told myself anyway. By the time I went to work, I'd almost convinced myself that none of it mattered. Almost. But I never forgot about that house. And a few months later, when I was bored one evening, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I searched online for news about that area of Route 41. I was looking for anything. Missing person reports, crime reports, anything that would explain what I'd heard that night. I didn't find anything specific, but I found a lot of articles about break-ins on that stretch of road, home invasions, robberies, all of them happening late at night, all of them in houses that were far enough from town that help took a long time to arrive. I never went back to Route 41 after that night. Not once. I take a longer route now, no matter where I'm going. It adds maybe 20 minutes to my drive, but I don't care. Some roads aren't worth driving on. Some places aren't worth visiting. That house is still there, I imagine. Those lights are probably still on. And somewhere in this world, there's probably someone sitting alone on that road at night, wondering if they should ask for help. I learned a valuable lesson that night. Pay attention to your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you hear something that sounds like someone needs help, but your gut is screaming at you to run, then maybe you should listen to that gut. Because sometimes the people who ask for help are the ones you need to be most careful of. Stay safe out there.